Next on my list is Thieves Town. And at least I got the padding for that dungeon out of the way already. You know, in Link to the Past, all you had to do was pull on the gargoyle pitchfork, and that was enough padding for them. You didn't need to answer a bunch of questions about lyrics to a song to get in. So, there was a puzzle where I fused with the wall a lot to get around bars, and slowly, boringly pushed a bunch of statues onto switches, until I finally stood on a switch that opened the door. One of those switches was in a narrow hallway that actually I could have avoided getting hit by the shooting arrow by just pulling the statue behind me and then fusing with the wall so I wasn't trapped between the wall and the statue. It's just hard to think like that sometimes when I'm used to Link to the Past. Later on, I got to the prison room with the ugly girl trapped in it, and it took me several seconds to figure out I could move left and down into a hidden passageway because the top-down perspective just had me seeing walls. I didn't know what to do at first. I tried bombing stuff to go north and I couldn't. Also, one time here you're forced to walk along a very narrow pathway that the controls are not built for. Then I went past some crystal switches and blocks into a pointlessly dark room with nothing in it but enemies that take forever to kill, because not only are they unnecessarily the enemies that fall asleep invincible every few seconds, what a stupid idea for an enemy that was, but also they're brick walls of health. I think every dungeon in Low World was designed under the assumption that you would play them with a fully upgraded Master Sword. That's the only explanation I can think of. Non-linearity hurts in that sense. And now for the exciting part of the dungeon. When you free the ugly thief girl, seriously, the girl blind with disguise as was way prettier. First, you arbitrarily have to press A in front of her to make her follow you, when simply walking into the girl was fine in Link to the Past, and I assumed she'd follow me after she was done talking automatically. And then, heart-pumping danger music plays, and you have an escape sequence where you fight off enemies that will grab her and force you to do everything in and over again, and you press A in front of her to make her stop on top of switches to progress. Even though you're backtracking through the whole dungeon back the way you came, it's a different experience, if not ideal, because it's a different way you go about it. Why do I have to tell her to start following me again after I've made the door open and no longer would need her to stand still? Then after she got stuck behind a wall because the pathfinding AI sucks ass, making her follow me too far away, something that never happened to Link to the Past with any of the followers, I'm locked into a room with those blue enemies that, again, take forever to kill, so that was boring. And a little worrying since they try to surround her. Good thing you can't attack her by accident with your sword. This room has no puzzles, nothing in it, you just beat the enemies that walk up to you. After that, they have the girl lampshade that she can't fight, saying that they took away her weapons and armor that she apparently used to have, and she's starving. Okay, at least they explain it, and don't necessarily have her be a weak damsel in distress normally. That's more progressive or whatever, but here's an idea, Nintendo. If you realize people wouldn't like their escorted not defending themselves, to the point where you wrote a justification lampshading it, then maybe it would have been a better idea to have her actually fight. Here's an idea, why can't I loan an item to her to let her fight any enemies that would come towards her automatically? That would have taken advantage of the rental system cleverly, because now you could rent an item to someone else temporarily. I guess I would destroy the tense challenge of protecting her from being grabbed, but that was never fun to begin with, just tedious. Not to mention the fact that she could still get grabbed from behind, so it wouldn't take away all of the challenge. I tried to walk across a bridge over a pit with her, and the AI didn't have her follow me over that either. What was wrong with the previous setup, where the followers were practically chained to your sprite by an invisible wire and followed you everywhere with no inconvenience to you? What, that's too unrealistic? I remember I used to get stuck at the water draining section because I somehow didn't notice a bridge against the left wall that I could pop behind to make land. That bridge lets the girl go over it and get to a switch, and the two of you get rid of some bars leading to a water draining lever. It's creative having a water draining puzzle in a non-water dungeon, and it gets better. I'm lucky I figured out that the chandeliers on the wall left and right of some bars leading to a money chest were not in fact on the same elevation. In fact, I didn't figure that out. I just fused with the wall, just barely not looking like the chandelier was covering it. Only later did I realize that the chandeliers were above the wall I fused with. Then after I fought some more blue enemies when the girl was safely above them in a very easy challenge, and that took forever, I got some sword improving or dashing ahead, and realized that dashing leaves your follower behind. I'd like to remind you that in Link to the Past, when you dash with most of the followers, they would continue to follow behind you perfectly fine, albeit further away from you. Here, dashing leaves her, fusing with the wall leaves her. It's such an inconvenience. While in Link to the Past, I intentionally use a Zelda follows you code because there's no inconvenience most of the time unless I'm heading for another follower, just so that I can feel less lonely by having Zelda follow me all over the place. I walked up the stairs, and there's a particularly memorable section where you're forced to make her wait on a switch when she could potentially be attacked by enemies and grabbed, and you end up above her and can defend her with the ice rod, which doesn't freeze enemies forever like it should, by the way, or the bombs. Except it's a lot more pathetic than I remember because it turns out I could just immediately drop down to her side anyways. The only challenge was that one enemy tried to get at her from the north and one enemy tried to get at her from the south, making it a little harder. Again, they were brick walls of health, so it was boring. Why did you stop following me when I was fighting the rats and force me to go press A near her again? I walked past the room full of black paintings with nothing on them that you can fuse with to get rupees, which was introducing the challenge of the boss in a safe environment and guiding you to easily figure it out for yourself. That's good design for once. It's kind of funny hitting the crystal switch in one room to make the enemies all fall to their deaths. I could practically ignore the blue enemies in the final conveyor belt room, just walk past them to the staircase. And then there's a tedious room where they recycled the wind gust switch puzzle from the wind dungeon, only I have 2 people to press switches now. It's a lot easier than I expected it to be. I pressed the only switches available to me at the times that I found them, and got myself and her to the right places. The problems were, one time I had to press A twice in front of her to get her following me again, and then she got stuck and wouldn't follow me over the bridge. Then I fell down to the lower room because guess what, the shitty controls aren't fucking designed to have you walk over a narrow bridge, and guess what happens if you fall? Rather than the game having the decency to just keep her standing where she used to be, like would be logical for her, or at the very least spawning her at the entrance to the Windgust room, they return her to her fucking cell, with no fanfare, no you failed, nothing, which makes it feel all the more arbitrary. She doesn't get grabbed by enemies that clearly weren't in the room to grab her when you fell. You were just forced to do it all over again. Oh good, I can go through the north door in the painting room, and it doesn't close behind me, even though when I was in the room with her cell, the south door was closed, so that was weird. So I have a shortcut to her cell that wasn't intuitive at all. But still, why the hell would she go all the way back to her cell just because I fell down? Okay, so they don't respawn the blue enemies that you make fall to their deaths, but they do respawn the ones in the conveyor belt room where you just go north. I went back to the Windgust puzzle room with a narrow level design that Link clearly wasn't designed to walk around in, especially when you have to walk around to get her to follow you over the narrow bridge, having to press A twice to get her to follow me into a fan again. Then I held down 2 switches to open a door, and then I thought I might have to complete an actual puzzle, holding down all the switches to get the next door to open, just to learn that all I had to do was take forever killing the 2 brick walls of health flanking me from both sides. One of them got stuck in front of the shooting arrow that it got hit by over and over again until it finally died, taking forever to because of all its health. That was tedious. Why constantly spawn these enemies? Why repeat the same challenge over and over again? I mean, at least they're actually using the girl in the dungeon as an escort mission this time around. In the original, she just followed you for a very short bit and immediately brought her to the boss room, no problem. At least here there's a challenge, but I could have done without those blue brick walls of health. It would have been fine enough to just have to kill all the normal enemies before they would hit her. Oh good, you actually use the fuse with a painting thing as a challenge before the boss shows up. You do it with a slowly moving painting to get the boss key. Then the boss room doesn't let the girl go in it for, some reason. I guess the boss is feeling really generous. But this blatantly contradicts the rules already established that when you're separated from her by a room, she magically goes back to her cell. Now she'll be conveniently waiting for you when you're done the boss. Why couldn't she have stayed put when I fell then? First we fused with a shield to get behind him a few times to attack him. The challenge with the boss is that he doesn't always have his shield out. He always attacked you with his extremely long-range sword before that, after firing a long beam of darkness that's easily avoidable. My problem with this is, how the hell do you avoid getting hit by that sword? You're inclined to be close to him because you have to be close to him to attack him and make him block with his shield. And the arena has you surrounded on all sides by a pit, so it's not like you can fuse with the wall to avoid the sword. You just have to tank his sword attacks all the damn time. After his sword attacks you, you can attack him and he'll block with a shield. and then you can fuse with the shield. Then it gets rid of the shield entirely, but this lets you attack his body from the front. The thing I like about this boss is that it actually gets hurt by bombs, and the bomb will automatically blow up on it if you throw it at him, something that never happens with enemies and bombs in the original game. So while I didn't see a health bar for the boss like there should always be as a gauge of your progress, and so I didn't feel like the bombs were doing much damage, at least I could use them. At least I could throw them at him from a distance. Eventually his head goes off, but it's not like it's a huge challenge. I don't even remember what it contributed to the boss fight, and I just fought it a minute ago typing this. It's not like in the original game where the heads would fly all over the place shooting fireballs at you when you were too preoccupied with attacking the boss facing to block any of the fireballs. So it's not as cheap. It's not as chaotic, basically requiring the magic cape. I just spammed the B buttons to win like I was mashing A to win a Sonic boss fight, and eventually I lost. And eventually I won. Surprisingly, the boss dying doesn't give you a heart container. You only get it after the thief girl leads you out of the dungeon and into a locked house with the painting in it. That is unique, getting the heart and dungeon token from a house and not the dungeon itself, as well as the twist that the thief girl doesn't betray you. She isn't blind in disguise or anything. She's just someone who needs help. And I guess they needed to have the heart container in the house to keep up the suspense of, is she the real boss, all the way up to finding the heart, because if it appeared right when the boss died, players wouldn't have had a reason to suspect her of pushing you into a pit or something when you were leaving the dungeon. But who cares? I'd rather have the heart fell out of the boss. That's always what happens, and it makes sense that way. Like you got the heart from the boss. Instead, there's a heart container in a house for no reason. Making me wonder why full heart containers don't appear in houses more often. I wish Link didn't follow her so slowly into the locked house. This game doesn't have true non-linear and mill rule, because you need to beat Thieves Town and save this particular sage that went to the Eastern Palace to get the Sand Rod, which is necessary to beat Misery Mire. Whatever dungeon, the Desert Palace, I guess this is good for a twist to shake things up, and it would make a difference if you could rent the Sand Rod right from the start aside from more non-linearity, considering how little the utility of the Sand Rod is because it's so situational. Much like the damn hookshot in this game, where all of its utility is in one dungeon, and then the creative ways you could use it against enemies and chests and Link to the Past all over the place are just gone. You can't one-shot tons of enemies with it. You can't hookshot yourself up to blocks, chests, and jars anymore. It probably doesn't even make you invincible when you're using it. Oh, it can still stun enemies, big whoop. All of its usefulness is gone past the dungeon based around it. It's kind of annoying that after asking a very simple question about who Link is, the thief girl just doesn't get an answer and says she won't ask any more questions she doesn't want to know, even though Link could have easily just said, I'm the hero of two worlds, and there you go. The Sand Rod is an interesting new item, lifting sand into a pillar you can fuse with, and it can even lift multiple squares of sand in a row to create a path. I like the concept of it, but you'd think with a rod called the Sand Rod, it would just create sand wherever. Like literally all the other rods, which create what they're in charge of. The Tornado Rod, the Fire and Ice Rods, they all generate their element. While the Sand Rod needs sand to be there, because letting you create a sand pillar wherever you want would probably be broken. Maybe it'd let you go out of bounds or something, being able to fuse with the wall literally wherever you want. But doesn't that create a solid object wherever you want concept apply to the Cane of Samaria? And you could argue that had more utility. You could create the block wherever you wanted to push down certain switches, you could throw it onto a conveyor belt and destroy it at one point to hit a crystal switch and then do it again, and it even created a ride in Turtle Rock. Not to mention if it skips the backtracking puzzle of the Ice Palace. The Sand Rod is cool, but it's restricted to the sand area, while basically creating a much larger block just like the Cane of Samaria, only because it's larger, you can't pick up and throw it or push it around, only walk on top of it or fuse with it. Also, you can rescue Mimais from the sand with it, that's good. Once you get the Sand Rod and Hilda wastes your time, Ravio forces you against your will to backtrack all the way back to his house because all of a sudden now his bird that can magically warp from Hyrule to Logol and back gets the rod back, even though it should have counted the sage being kidnapped as him falling in battle and therefore took back his Sand Rod for me to use. So it contradicted the game logic of the rental items just to justify 1, me not having the Sand Rod, and 2, forcing me to warp all the way back to Ravio to rent it myself, even though the sage gave it to me, just for it to be stolen and held hostage by Rabio's evil-looking bird. At least I can dash diagonally now, and if you dash along a diagonal wall and it goes vertical, you inexplicably keep dashing along it. I tried this on the north wall to the left of the marsh and to the right of the grove and low roll. By the way, you can find the thief girl hiding out in a previously empty cave south of Rabio's house. Previously empty, so you'd have no reason to go there again. And she gives you money. It's good that they didn't completely forget that she existed.